One of the things before we go into Jimmy, where Jimmy actually talks about the legal plan itself, one of the components that we think is very important on the state lodge level is what should that local lodge be doing, or what should your local lodge be doing to support your members? In the recent legislative session, we worked with the Louisiana State Troopers Association in order to get some legislation passed where peer support counselors actually fall into what Donovan was referring to earlier, where they have that confidentiality. So if the officer needs to talk to someone, we have some avenues through the FOP and through the Southern Law Enforcement Foundation that we've had a great working relationship for probably the past 20 years, that they're able to go through and to give them some of that confidential and privileged communication for them to be able to speak with anybody. Like Donovan said, the attorney is always the best for you to do. So we have that information that's there. So peer support, family support, what type of support are we going to do internally for the officers? We've seen where some of these situations go ongoing for a year or more, that the officer's on leave. And when officers are on leave, that means that they're not able to work those extra duty assignments that so many of us utilize to make our final paycheck and to be able to pass some of the bills. So we see a lot of local lodges that are putting together fundraisers or different things on that area or in that realm to be able to support those families. So when you develop part of your process on what you're going to do and how to respond, for this, not only the legal plan, keep in mind that there needs to be some type of local lodge support component. And you can always reach out to the state lodge for us to be able to help you facilitate some of those things that are there. So before we get into Jim and let him talk about the legal defense plan itself, we've got one more poll question. And so we're launching the poll and just ask, the question is, do you have immediate access to FOP legal plan members? Do you know who is on the legal plan with your lodge and who has access to a legal plan attorney at 2:00 in the morning? Do you have a list? Does your board have a list where they can get access to that as it goes? So just real quick answer that. We'll wait a few more seconds for people to be able to answer that. And remarkably, it's overwhelming that they don't have access to that. So this should be a takeaway from outside of this webinar. A couple of takeaways that we have. One, do you have an attorney on call? And two, maybe you need to get with your treasurer, who Jimmy communicates with, in order to have that list of legal plan members, or get with Jimmy for him to get that legal plan list where everybody can have access. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy for him to talk about the FOP's legal defense plan. Jimmy?
Thank you, Daryl. Quick introduction for those who don't know me. I'm Jim Gallagher. I serve as the financial secretary of the Louisiana State Lodge, and I'm also the Louisiana State Lodge Legal Defense Chairman. I am a member of Crescent City Lodge in New Orleans, as is Donovan. I'm the secretary treasurer of my local lodge. Donovan and I have been working together for quite a number of years on these legal issues involving the legal defense plan and coverage. Before I get into my section, I do want to go back and reiterate a point that both Daryl and Donovan made concerning social media. If you ever are faced, or your members are faced with a critical incident, especially an officer-involved shooting, by all means, try your best to keep them off of social media, and don't post. And beyond social media, even news outlets, online news outlets, these incidents are going to generate news stories. And in today's world, the public gets to comment on those news stories. And there are haters out there. And there will be terrible negative comments made on these news stories. Your members have to understand that haters are going to hate. It's not about them personally. It's generally about the police, that the hateful messages are being made. They should try their best to avoid reading them, and at all costs, never, ever reply to them. We have seen incidents where police officers involved in perfectly good shootings end up losing their jobs because they made some stupid comment on social media or in reply to a news story. And that comment violated their department's or agency's rules, and they were terminated. So by all means, I just wanted a little more stress on that topic. Also, if Donovan's still listening, I just want to ask him if, as I go through this, Donovan has a whole lot more practical experience with the legal defense plan than I do, as far as dealing with the claim administrators and whatnot. So if he hears me say anything that he believes he needs to clarify or add anything to, please, Donovan, feel free. And whoever's out there listening, look at the bottom of your screen. You have the Q&A, the chat, the raise hand. Please feel free to jump in whenever you need to. So with all that said, the first thing everybody needs to understand about the legal defense plan is the word defense. It is a defense against actions taken against you. It is generally not a proactive coverage. It isn't going to pay for an attorney for you to file a lawsuit against an individual or your agency. This is a legal defense plan for actions that your agency or the criminal justice system is taking against you. It offers criminal, civil, and administrative coverage. There's 3 different coverages. There are 2 different payment levels. You can pay for just the criminal and civil coverage, which we call at-will coverage. It's designed for sheriff's deputies, our reserve or part-time officers, police officers who do not enjoy the protections of civil service. So that coverage is the criminal and civil coverage. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. It offers an unlimited criminal defense for allegations made against you based on incidents that occur while you're on duty. Whether the allegations are based on citizen complaints or on rank initiated complaints or on body worn camera reviews, if the allegation kicks off a criminal investigation, you will be entitled to have an attorney paid for by the legal defense plan. And as has been stressed in Donovan's part, all officer involved shootings, most critical incidents, start out at least as criminal investigations. So for that first initial part, even if you have just the at-will coverage, you will be getting an attorney for that initial investigation while it's looking at it as to see whether there are any criminal allegations to be made. As soon as your department tells you or your attorney that we're finished a criminal investigation, this is now an administrative investigation. If all you have is the at-will coverage, a legal defense plan will cease at that point. It says on duty, there are certain instances where it will cover a member for an off-duty action if the member is acting as a law enforcement officer when that action is taken, even if the member is off-duty, technically. We have an example we use, I think it's actually an Ohio case, where a police officer with a 15-year-old daughter, the daughter goes to a party at one of the friend's house, and sometime later calls the member, the police officer at home, and tells him, look, Dad, I don't feel comfortable here. There's some stuff going on I'm not comfortable with. Can you please come get me? And the father goes to the location to pick up the daughter. When there, is confronted by other people who are at the party, and apparently there's drinking and other things going on. And it gets to the point where the officer has to take an action. He identifies himself as a police officer. and arrest one of the party goers. A lawsuit ensued. And the legal defense plan determined that, no, this is actually a covered event, because once that member identified himself as a police officer and took a law enforcement action, at that time, he became, again, technically on duty. So that was a covered event. So that's the difference when it'll handle an off-duty incident. If you're acting as a police officer, it'll generally be handled. The civil coverage is the second end of the criminal and civil coverage, the at-will coverage. If you're involved in an incident that results in you being named as a defendant in a civil action, and if that incident is what they call in the scope of your employment, if you're acting as a law enforcement officer, and that incident results in a civil lawsuit being filed and the member is named as a defendant, you will have a right to have an attorney assigned to you from the legal defense plan. But the civil coverage is what they call secondary coverage. And that just means that it's your agency's primary coverage to represent you. And generally that's what happens. When a police officer is sued, the agency, the city attorney or the litigation section of the agency handles the representation. And if that's the case, the FOP attorney simply monitors the case, meets with the agency to make sure that everything is in place and that you will be adequately covered civilly, and then just take a monitoring role. But if your agency, for whatever reason, decides, no, we're not going to provide you with a representation, which is their right under Louisiana law, as I understand it. And or if your attorney decides that this agency isn't interested really in representing you, they're more interested in representing themselves, and they're going to throw you to the wolves. In that case, the legal defense attorney becomes your primary attorney and handles the entire civil coverage. It would require that either the agency issue you a letter letting you know you're not going to be represented, or your attorney has to file a claim with the legal defense plan explaining why it's in your best interest to have your own attorney. So again, this is a defense plan. It does not cover any lawsuits that you may file as a police officer against another police officer, your agency, or a citizen. There is a process that your legal plan attorney can go through to request approval for an offensive or proactive action, but that would have to be approved by the National Legal Defense Plan Board. Those board members are all active or retired law enforcement officers, so there's going to be a certain understanding there, but that approval is not very readily given. The other thing that you have to know, that this is not a liability insurance policy. It's again a legal defense plan. If you're sued civilly and there is a judgment that is determined you have to pay, and we all went through that qualified immunity fight over the last legislative session. So this will be a rare occurrence where the police officer is actually held liable. But if that does happen, then this plan will not pay that judgment. That judgment will be your responsibility. We'll pay for the legal fees, the attorney's fees, but not the judgment. As Daryl said a bit earlier, we have a myriad of attorneys already signed up with the plan throughout the state of Louisiana. I think there are 27 attorneys, and all the way from Bossier City down as far south as Thibodaux, from New Orleans to Lafayette. We have attorneys all over the state that are already approved by the legal plan and ready to defend you. But you can, if you have the coverage, if you prefer to use another attorney, you certainly have that right. A little bit later on, I'll go through what it takes to have an attorney come on the legal plan. But if you have a personal relationship with an attorney that you'd rather use, you can use a non-legal plan attorney. There are some limitations on payment, and we can discuss that as we move on. Daryl? The Second payment option is what we call full coverage, and that is criminal, civil, and administrative or disciplinary coverage. This is generally designed for members who have civil service protection. Everything we said about the criminal and civil coverage is exactly the same under the full coverage, except that it adds the administrative or disciplinary coverage. Again, the disciplinary coverage is unlimited for any on-duty or off-duty action that your department takes an action against you on. If certainly anything on duty, regardless of the reason, if your department's going to discipline you for some on-duty action, the legal defense plan is going to cover you. You're going to get an attorney. Off-duty, not only those scope of employment issues, but even if, unfortunately, it happens, if a police officer is arrested on a DWI or for any other reason, not having anything to do with his job as a police officer, or if the officer is involved in a domestic violence situation, your department's going to take a disciplinary action against you, even if those actions took place off duty. They bring discredit to the department, they're against departmental rules, and your agency is going to take a disciplinary action. When that happens, you will be covered, regardless of the reason. If your agency is going to take a disciplinary action against you, you will be covered. And when we say covered, we mean we're going to provide you with a legal defense plan attorney, or your own attorney if that's the way you decide to do it. It's going to pay for all those attorney fees through the disciplinary process, through the civil service appeal process, into the courts if necessary. If you need to appeal the civil service decision, it will go into the court of appeals and will pay for your attorney fees there. There is one caveat with if you're a probationary, if your member's a probationary officer, it will cover everything I've talked about for all internal investigations. But when you remember, probationary employees or at-will employees, they're not covered by civil service for the most part. And so the legal plan will only pay for the representation at the internal departmental level, up to and including if the probationary officer is terminated. The law requires that the officer be given what they call a Loudermill hearing, and that is where the legal plan coverage will stop for a probationary officer. Something new that's cropped up over the last couple of legislative sessions is post-certification issues. Louisiana Post now has a right to withdraw either permanently or temporarily a police officer's post-certification based on on disciplinary actions that they become aware of. Those actions by Louisiana Post always come with an appeal, and we will provide the legal defense plan will provide an attorney to cover those post-certification hearings at the Louisiana Post level.
As a note, the Crescent City Lodge handles disciplinary representation outside of the FOP legal defense plan. Choice of attorney is limited to one of 5 core attorneys for disciplinary representations unless prior approval of the Crescent City Lodge Legal Committee is obtained. All other aspects of the National FOP Legal Defense Plan are either followed or expanded.
We talked about the coverage, the legal defense plan, and it is just very, very wide coverage. Sorry, I'm gonna have some notes here. The broad coverage, when we say that, what we're talking about is, again, whether we're talking about the at-will criminal civil coverage or the full disciplinary coverage. If it pays for, the term they use is reasonable and necessary legal expenses. And those include private investigators. If your attorney says, I need to have an investigator go out and re-interview witnesses, the legal plan will pay for that. If you have to give depositions, if you have to get outside polygraphs, medical or mental evaluation, forensics analysis, firearms experts, collision reconstructionists, jury consultants, anything that you need, defensive tactics instructors, expert witnesses, anything that your attorney decides that you need to present an adequate defense, and those needs are reasonable and necessary, they are generally approved by the legal defense plan. I prepared, I don't know, Darrell, can you put up that little flyer? I prepared a little flyer.
Yes, the flyer that Jimmy is referring to, I sent it to a link to everyone in chat with it. So you'll be able to directly link it through our NEP Connect side. Let me bring it up real quick and screen share it though.
And I'm gonna go ahead and talk while Darrell's trying to do that. And if you can't get it up, then you can do the link and we can send it out separately. I have about a dozen or so color individual page flyers that I use and put together as a booklet when we go out and do recruiting, trying to start new lodges or get new members. And one of them I think was particularly appropriate to this discussion. And it's entitled, how does your association's plan compare to the legal defense plan? And what we find in a lot of our local lodges, there is a second group, whether they call themselves the union or whatever it may be. There is another group who also say we provide legal coverage to our members. But we've looked at a lot of those plans, and they don't compare at all to the FOP's legal defense plan. So you ask, the idea of this is for you to print out and put up around your department to have your members say, I'm an FOP member, but I'm also paying this other, I'm paying for coverage through another association. Well, ask them, and here are the questions. Will they pay all the fees, legal filing fees, other costs required? When you appeal a disciplinary action, for example, the Court of Appeal is going to expect you that there are going to be costs associated with it. You're going to have to pay filing fees. It could be several $100s. And the court is also going to provide you, if you are the attorney or the member requesting the appeal.
Family pharmacy. We show that Donovan has a prescription order that has been filled.
Hello, what is that? Anyway, that it will require you to provide transcripts of the previous hearings, the civil service level hearings. That can run into the thousands of dollars to produce transcripts. The FOP's legal plan pays all that. You should, if your members are covered by another plan, a union plan or whatever, they should be asking, are y'all going to pay all those out-of-pocket costs for me? Are they going to pay, you're going to pay the filing fees? You're going to pay for transcripts? A lot today, when there is a critical incident, especially, everybody even remotely involved is going to have to go make statements, use of force statements. A lot of these incidents have multiple attorneys, multiple officers involved, 3, 4, 5 officers. Your members should be asking their association, their non-FOP association, how many attorneys do you have available? If there are 3 officers involved and we all have our own perspective on what occurred, are we going to get 3 different attorneys? The FOP, like we said earlier, has 27 attorneys under contract. We can give each officer involved their own attorney to represent them, to make sure that that officer's position is fully represented. Most of these union type associations have a single attorney under retainer. And either that one attorney can represent everybody, or they'll pick and choose which one they're going to represent. Your members should be aware of that. Again, we went through the private investigators, expert witnesses. I'm not sure that everybody would pay for that. The off-duty, out-of-scope incidents. Here's a big part. Does your union, does that other association have the financial stability to actually handle a serious investigation? We're going to get to a slide in a little while that talks about some of the things that have happened around the country lately and how much the legal the legal representation cost, and it gets up in sometimes into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Does your local union have several $100,000 to pay for your representation? The FOP does. The FOP has, the National FOP Legal Plan pays all claims, attorney fees, everything going out each year. And over and above all of that, there's a $6 million reserve fund that they have, and to handle these really heater cases. And then they reinsure with a major international insurance company that if a particular incident results in legal fees over, I forget the exact amount, 300,000, 500,000, then this outside insurance picks up the coverage. So it allows the FOP to guarantee, regardless how much this is going to cost, we're going to have the resources to pay for it. And then there's another thing. Police officers these days are moving all over the country for jobs. In New Orleans, we're seeing the last several recruit class we talked to, the majority of police officer recruits were from out of state. They're coming down here to take a job with the New Orleans Police Department, and I know the same is true for other agencies. The FOP legal plan has attorneys all over the country. So if one of these officers is traveling out of their jurisdiction and they're armed and they have to take some action and use their weapon, is your association going to be able to fly an attorney up to Walla Walla, Washington to represent that police officer? The FOP will have an attorney in Walla Walla, Washington to represent that police officer. So that's just some of the questions. Thank you, Daryl, for that. We can move on. We talked about the broad coverages. You can move on to the next screen, Daryl. We get down to who can be covered. First and foremost, you have to be a member of the Fraternal Order of Police to qualify for this coverage. You have to be either an active member or an associate member working as a reserve or part-time. If you're an active law enforcement officer or a full-time employee of a law enforcement agency, and you're a member of the Fraternal Order of Police, active or associate, you can have the full coverage, or if you decide, you can have the at-will coverage. If you're working for a college or university police department, if you are at a public college or university, you have the exact same coverage as any other law enforcement officer. If you're working for a private institution, here in New Orleans, Tulane University, for example, we have members that are Tulane University police officers. They can they can get the criminal coverage only, that the single criminal coverage. They pay the same price as the criminal and civil, but it doesn't provide civil coverage or disciplinary coverage to private institutions. And I think that's the same thing for railroad police officers. The criminal coverage only because you're not working for a governmental entity. Fire investigators, arson investigators, you can be a member of the plan, but you can only get the criminal and civil coverage. You can't get the disciplinary coverage as an arson investigator because your agency can take an action against you that has nothing at all to do with the law enforcement aspects of it. Tribal police officers, Native American police officers also have the right to have the coverage. Daryl? Pricing. The at-will coverage that I spoke about for the criminal and civil coverage only, that's $64 a year, $64 a year. That comes to $5.33 a month if you're paying bi-weekly through a payroll deduction. It's $2.46 a pay period. But most lodges, the lodge itself collects the money and pays through the state lodge to the national. It's $64 a year. Full coverage, that's the criminal, civil, and administrative coverage, is $300 a year. That comes to $25 a month. You always have to remember that in addition to this, you have to be a member, so you have to pay your local lodge dues. I would urge local lodges to take a hard look at their dues structure. And if it's possible, if your constitution allows it, try to figure out for your active law enforcement members a way to include the cost of the legal plan into their local dues structures. It's a whole lot easier to say, if you're a member of the FOP and a member of our primary agency, you're going to be covered by the legal plan, and just figure it out that, for full coverage, $25 a month or $11.53 per pay period. Adjust your dues structure so that that's all included. I can tell you from experience in New Orleans, when you have a real major incident like we did after Hurricane Katrina, where we had the Danziger Bridge trials and the Glover trials, federal trials, where the FBI and the DOJ came in and pulled in hundreds of police officers. And at the time, our local lodge was doing the legal defense plan as an optional benefit. And what we found happened is that officers who did not pay for the legal plan coverage separately came to the FOP, our local lodge, and said, I'm being investigated by the FBI. What are you going to do to help me? That's a hard choice for a local lodge to make. We decided that we were going to try our best to help everybody, but it cost us an awful lot of money, $300,000, I think. But it's a whole lot easier that if all your active members know this isn't a choice, this is part of the dues, and it's being offered to you by the legal defense plan. If you're a member of the Fraternal Order of Police, you will be covered if you can make that part of your due structure. And it takes that decision away from that local lodge. Am I going to cover this guy or that guy? If he's a member of the Fraternal Order of Police, and if the legal plan is part of your due structure, then they are covered. So just consider that as you move on. And on an individual basis, an individual lodge, I'm more than happy to sit and discuss what the various options are about how payments can be done. And give me a call. Do we have another screen, Daryl, or is that? This is, I mentioned this earlier, this, what the tremendous cost of some of this can be. I'm to point out down in Louisiana, the New Orleans Danziger Bridge incident, the legal defense plan paid over $850,000 covering New Orleans police officers in that incident. Our local lodge, again, spent close to $300,000 covering officers that weren't covered by the legal defense plan. You can just take a second and look at some of these. Some of them have made national news. The North Carolina use of force incident, Tennessee, $800,000 spent so far on an incident, officer-involved shooting in Tennessee. Out in California, this is an administrative fitness for duty coverage. Under the administrative coverage, the legal plan is paid over $165,000. So it's the point of it is these incidents are occurring more often. The cost is astronomical, but the FOP legal defense plan is there set up in such a way that they can guarantee, regardless what the cost is, if you remember the legal defense plan, you will be covered. I don't know if anybody has any questions, if they use the raising hands. If there's anything I missed, Donovan, Daryl, please jump in. One thing I'm going to urge everybody to do, my email address and Donovan's there. I don't know if there's a way for you to publish our phone numbers as well, Daryl, on there. As lodge leaders, you should have, at the very least, Donovan's phone number in your phone. If you want to put mine as well, under FOP in your phone, so that when these critical incident occurs and all the shit's hitting the fan, all you need to do is go to your cell phone and press a button, and you're right there. So it's just important if you can remember to put all that in your phone, and you'll have it handy. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to handle it, answer them. On local lodges, I'm always available to take a ride anywhere in the state. If you want me to make a presentation to your local lodge members, telling them about the legal plan, I am always more than happy to do that. And I guess that's it for me, Darrell.
All right. Well, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate it. It doesn't appear that we have any hands raised or questions that are out there. We hope that this has been informative and it gives you something as a local lodge leader to kind of think about preparations for the future and if a critical incident does happen. We have recorded this session, and it will be probably next week posted on our YouTube channel, and will also be switched over to podcast. We are now on Spotify under Louisiana FOP. The name of the podcast is called Connected, and we'll be putting that out to members probably within the next couple of weeks. Expect some more of these webinars in the future. Especially as the legislative session gets close and other information that we feel like is critical to members for them to need and know. I see, Jimmy, you got your hand raised up.
I did. I did, looking at my notes, realize I left one important part out. Darrell mentioned earlier the website, and I'm going to say it again. It's www.foplegal.com, with FOP legal being a single word. If you need to find an attorney in your area, you can go to that website. There's a button at the top that says Plan Attorney and Claims. Click that, then click on Plan Attorney. You'll get a little search screen come up. Select Louisiana and hit search, and it'll give you a list of all 27 attorneys that are already FOP legal plan attorney approved. You can call them directly. On that same website, there's access for the process to file a claim, and you will be required to file a claim form with the National FOP's legal plan. We strongly recommend that the attorney fill out that claim form on your behalf, because it asks you to describe the incident, and the way that incident is described will make a determination of what coverage you're going to be able to get. So I just wanted to mention that about the legal plan. There's an awful lot more. There is if I can put this up, you can download FOP legal plan booklet. I don't think that can be seen on there because my office is so atrocious that I had to blur the back of it before I did this. So the blur kind of got the book as well. But you can download the plan brochure. Yeah, it'll answer a lot of questions. There's a frequently asked questions section. So please go to the website, www.foplegal.com. Thank you, Darrell.
Okay. And I just put in the chat for those of y'all that are there and want to copy it real quick, of the website that Jimmy referred to, where you can look for the legal plan attorney search, is in the chat. So you can right click and copy and paste it to your browser for you to have it. So once again, I thank everybody for participating. Big thanks to Jim and Donovan for them taking time out of their early Friday morning in order to do this. We wish Tiger would have been here, but we were able to hold our own without him. But hopefully he'll be part of the next one that's here. So everybody have a great day and stay safe.